Darlene, welcome to the Easy Conversations podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm sure we're going to have a very interesting conversation based on what we've talked about previously. There's a lot of stuff that you shared around your work, and
Hmm.
especially around the whole notion of energy healing, which can sometimes seem very esoteric, but it's something I've been able to experience in the past, and I found it very powerful and insightful as well. But before we get into all of that, I do want to give you an opportunity to share with the listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what's brought you here today.
Okay, thank you for having me on your show. And I'm a medical intuitive. I'm also a multidimensional mediator, channel, author. And one of the things that is more recent is a timeline architect.
Mm.
And that's been something in the energy field when we change our past lives, when we address them, or even our timelines that exist in this lifetime, when we address them in a very real, open hearted way, things change in our present life. And I think because of therapy, therapeutically, when you think of going back and visit your childhood and you have the conversation with mom or dad or whatever, yes, it does relieve the person in the present day. But I'm finding even more so in that energy field when we shift something through conversation, through visualization, through heartfelt expression in a past life, it's pretty amazing how it changes in our present life. That's always an aha moment. Like, how does that even happen?
Yes.
We know about the energy fields, we know about how they intermingle and how they relate, but really to witness it over and over again when you change something there, how it affects here when you think that it wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate that. And I do want to jump right into it. So, when we talk about past lives, that can be very difficult for people to absorb or even comprehend. And there's a whole notion, I think, depending on people's belief system too, because we can often look at it, okay, then is there reincarnation happening, which can be very difficult for people to accept as well, like I said, based on their belief system. But when we're talking about past lives, because you did touch on the multi-dimensional aspect as well, what are we really talking about for people to just be able to get it to it at a surface level, or maybe you don't understand it at a surface level, maybe you need to go to that depth. But what does it really mean? And I do want to talk about the shift as well that happens when people are able to have some level of acceptance for that healing piece. But just from the get-go, what are we talking about when it comes to past lives?
So a past, and that wasn't something that I was raised in or even believed in or was quite fearful of.
Yeah.
That there were other lives that I've had, and what does that mean, and what did I do, and who was I, and all of that. And when I came to a deeper understanding that, yes, we do, like my experience and my belief system is now, is that we do incarnate and we have a soul level that travels with us, but we are here to learn things. We're here to become all that we can be. And if people don't believe in that's fine too. Going back to even addressing the ancestral trauma is just as important, because if you can go back and understand and get really united with what happened in your ancestors 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 generations ago, if you can understand that, if you can come to terms with what happened to relieve your patterns and your belief systems about yourself, about others, about religion, about the planet, about whatever was given to you, and you come to terms with it, you bring it into a neutral place or you come to peace with it, it changes not just how you hold it in this lifetime, but it changes how the universe brings you more, because the universe is very reciprocal. So if you're going to clear up something, whether it's a past life or an ancestral issue, trauma, the universe in the present day gives you more,
Mhm.
like not in a negative way. If you take a look at synchronicity or your dream state or people that you start to meet that feel like, wow, I have a different resonance with them. I have a different belief about them. You, as long as you're receptive, which is difficult for some people to be receptive, they're givers, but they don't necessarily know how to receive.
Mhm.
But the universe will start to provide. We just have to keep our ears and eyes open.
Okay. And I appreciate that. So, how does the energy healing come into play in this space?
The energy healing,
Yes.
is that what you said? If we're all energy and we're putting out the intention to heal, to address, to navigate something, you're working in the energy field. And whatever you do there that's positive, that is helping to move through something, it's all energy. That also affects our physical bodies
Mhm.
as well, right? So when we clear something that we've been holding on to, as a medical intuitive, I know that ancestral as well as past lives can lodge in the physical form. And when you clear it way back at the age of cause, wherever that is, it affects ripple effects through energy, affects what's happening in your body now, and then addressing that. What does that mean? So your gallbladder's been blocked for 10 years, right? Because there was anger issues or there's something that happened in a past life or ancestral. What do you need to do about it now? Because maybe now your body is willing to do something about it as opposed to hold on to it.
Mhm. Okay. No, and that makes sense. So, there's this other idea that I want to test because I have clients that I work with will often say they don't feel worthy. They feel like they're not capable of achieving things because sometimes they'll even go as far as saying they feel that they're cursed, that good things won't happen to them. And when I hear you talk about past lives or even just healing in the sense of going back to one's childhood, that's where I tend to want to bridge that gap is whatever belief you have needs to be healed.
Mhm.
And this belief that you have about yourself is what's holding you back. And you're living it through the thoughts that you create, right? So then the world around you is a manifestation of everything you have in your head. When you hear that, what are your thoughts around this whole idea? And why do you think people get stuck? And is it true that often they are living that self fulfilling prophecy?
Yes, you will attract what you believe, right? You are who you eat, you know what you eat. So it's that same thing. It's very reciprocal of what you take on or what you keep bringing to you because you have this pattern belief system. Working with the childhood issues is always important because there's always a thread.
Yeah.
Whether there's a past life or anything connected to it, there is always a thread of where that originated. So going back and figuring out, okay, yeah, this makes sense at age 3. My mother always used to criticize me. I never could get it right, or my father, or whatever those circumstances were, because it doesn't have to be parental.
Mhm.
It can be a teacher, it can be a sibling, it can go in many different directions, but we get wounded in relationship. So that's where a lot of the times we get our patterns and belief systems is from what we experienced and our perception of what we experienced. So going back and addressing that can take the pressure off of it a lot. But if it stays still, if you can't manage to come up in a way that moves through it, that's when I look at, is there something and that's the people that usually call me. I've been working on this for 10 years and it's not moving.
Mhm.
Is there something under this that I'm not aware of? And then we look deeper.
Mhm. And when I think about that whole notion, to me, the thing that comes to mind is that's our purpose in life in a way, right? To address this or to heal this. And that can also evolve with time, right? In the present moment, I may be healing an aspect of my life. And as I continue to grow through this, there might be something new for me to focus on. And that to me is how my purpose evolves. Now, do you also feel that purpose can be something we either choose to pursue because of past life experiences, or we tend to evolve at one point, and then in this current life, we take on a different purpose. What are your thoughts around that?
We can bring in our woundedness that may not get totally unwrapped in our lifetime because we make different choices, because we always have the choice, right? So it's as if you had a recipe that you say, this is what I want to make. And then you get there and find out there's no eggs or milk. You're not going to make that recipe.
Right.
So it's that place of, we can bring in both the woundedness and the purpose. Like, I'm working with a lot of military men, families, and they come in this lifetime with being a savior, a protector, or whatever. A lot of them do, right? And they pick the families that are going to either make that happen, right? Move into the protector role because somebody needs it, or they go where they need to protect themselves, and then they move into, why do they go into the military? But where does that really originate from? If it wasn't in this lifetime, where does that mission or purpose? And a lot of them have moved into the spirituality where they're not fighting. They're not at war anymore. And they found the purpose in a different way, because you can always repurpose, right? You don't have to stay in. If I've been a warrior in another lifetime or something, or my grandfather was, I don't have to bring that in as a warrior. I could be an advocate for somebody. I could speak up for somebody. It's not about the same vibration.
And speaking of vibration, like I know you touched on earlier that often you will resonate with certain people and be drawn to them. And I've had some of those experiences. And it's hard to explain because sometimes it even feels like I've known them for a really long time and it's the first time we've actually met. Is there, again, a past life aspect to that? Or is there something just about that person that feels familiar?
If we're all into healing ourselves, and however that happens in any lifetime, when you meet somebody and it feels resonant, it feels, oh, I've known them before, or it could be two things. One, yes, they could be the same soul person, different configuration. They're not male anymore, they're female, or they're a child, they're not your father, whatever that is. So you can look at it that way. But if we're all healing ourselves, the universe can provide you with somebody to come into your life that may not be a past life person, but they may resonate like that. They may have the same kind of personality. They may trigger you the same. They may love you the same. It's whatever you need to work through, the possibility of working through, or to feel connected to. It's not always work. You meet people that you really deeply love and you don't know why. And that in itself could be, maybe in that lifetime you didn't have that with that person or someone that was like that. So now you've found it. Now what are you going to do with it?
When I've often looked at, in retrospect, like looking back, I've often looked at it as, okay, these people were my teachers. Sometimes the relationship dissolves over time, or it's enduring, but I've had to work on not getting attached to any one outcome and just having acceptance for whatever that journey is meant to be. But then looking back, for me, what's really been helpful is looking at it as, okay, this individual served a purpose and they were a teacher, and not necessarily label the relationship as good or bad, because then again, that's where the attachment comes in. So again, do you feel that these relationships we have throughout our lifetime can be teachers? And is it a good way of looking at it that way?
I think we're all teachers, whether we have children and they're teachers too. We will keep learning till our last breath, and then we try to do it all over again. So everybody is a teacher. And if you can look at them that way, what am I learning from you? Even things you don't like, what are you learning from them? Because it's a growth spurt sometimes. It's something, accountability is big. Somebody says this to you, you have to take a look at, and it feels, oh, geez, I hope not, or I'm not like that. You become very defensive. There's probably an element of truth in it somewhere. And if you react to it, there is most likely an element of truth in it somewhere. So It's those places of seeing everybody as a teacher, big, small, it doesn't really matter. And what are they teaching me? And what am I teaching them?
Yeah, and I agree. I think even when you're talking about there's an element of truth because even when people will tend to trigger me in a way for whatever reason, I may not even know them, never spoken to them, but something will trigger me. That to me is also a sign that there's something about me that's coming up here. And it's
Yeah.
easy to often judge others, but how can I look at that within myself? And what is this person trying to mirror back to me? And I think that
Yeah.
curiosity can be very helpful. And again, to your point, everyone is a teacher from that perspective. That
And it's the accountability piece that I think really moves us into our evolution. If we are as accountable as we can be, 100% would be amazing. But if we could be as accountable, yes, I did that, and yes, I'm really sorry, and all of that. That's where we talk about where can people start. Are you familiar with the Ho'opono?
no.
So this is something, it's a Hawaiian prayer. It's Ho'oponopono. So it's Hooponopono. It started out as a karmic release. So it has everything to do with accountability. And I use it in several ways. I've used it for decades. That you can use it with places that you feel like you can't let go of.
Mm,
There's a person that I hurt. I should have said this to my mother. Whatever that is, that where you're feeling shame or guilt or just like beating yourself up. You talk to that person, you bring them in, whether that's in a visualization or a meditation or even in writing. And it's the I'm sorry, but it comes from the heart space.
mm,
It's something that you do, I'm sorry, in as detail as you can, that I did this to you, that I didn't know any better, that I wish I would have done something different. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you and thank you. And what I find with people is that it frees them up
mm,
to just make a list, like create a journal, especially if you're carrying a lot of that burden. Create a journal from everything that you remember and just start working through it.
mm,
And the other thing, as a medical intuitive, our bodies split off from ourselves at times when they've been overburdened, when they've been too much abuse, too much heartache, too many accidents, too many, whatever has influenced or hurt the body. And I would have them do that with their different ages or different specifics, events that happened to them. Has there been any surgeries in your life that it wasn't warranted, or it was something that your body was nervous about, or whatever? Just keep aligning with your body through the Ho'opono, and it makes your health better now. And it also changes things now. Like I've had people that have done that because they've had serious accidents. And when they come to present day, because the body will rebel. I'm not taking that. I'm going to have a reaction. I'm going to be sensitive to this food or that drink or whatever. But when you acknowledge the body, you free it up to cooperate.
mm.
And so in present day, a lot of the sensitivities go down. The body starts to function better because it's been seen and heard.
The example you're sharing here is if someone's wronged someone and they're feeling guilt and shame. But a lot of times I feel like we tend to, I can speak for myself and a lot of other people I talk to as well, that we tend to direct the shame at ourselves, right? So I feel like I've made mistakes or I've acted in ways that I'm not proud of. There'll be a lot of shame, and it's more internal rather than me harming someone else. Is the idea the same then? Like you can still have that prayer and try to find forgiveness for yourself and let go of that shame?
Yes, absolutely. That's the third way that you can use that because that's mostly what hinders us
Mm,
is our inability to forgive ourselves. We don't feel worthy of that. We feel like we're going to be judged or critical, like I didn't do a good job and I didn't raise my children well and I hurt a partner and whatever those things are. It's yes, you can talk to them, but the self condemnation is a killer. And if you can talk to that 10-year-old, that 12-year-old, of maybe something that they did that they feel very ashamed of, to say, as an adult, you as the parent of that 12 or 13, 14-year-old, I see you and I'm sorry that this happened to you. I'm sorry that you hold that on yourself, that you're creating this for yourself. I'm really sorry. Please forgive me that I can't help you.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. And I know you've talked about your role here as a medical intuitive, but I am curious, and I would assume the audience is as well. What does that mean? Right? What does that entail? What does that look like? And again, I'm sure you tend not to get too attached to any given label, but trying to understand what does that hold for you and how does that come about as a person in a role?
Okay, so a session, which is an hour, goes in many different directions. But if people call because I have a symptom, I have something that doctors aren't diagnosing it, it's still here. They're telling me I need to take steroids or I need to go to see a shrink or whatever that is, right? So we track it. We track it. What is the symptom? What is your body trying to tell you? Where does it stem from? What needs to be addressed back then? So you're aligning. Like as a medical intuitive, I'm checking all these levels of what's happening on your mental level, your emotional level, what's really happening in the body. Is there other organs in the body that are being compromised because of this? You get like the full picture of what's happening. I'm very intuitive, and I get a lot of information auditorily, visually, kinesthetically. And so I work with all of that to have a better understanding. Because when I'm working with somebody, I'm tapping into accessing their innate wisdom, their body level, as well as their guidance system to find out what is going on, where is the origin of this, and then working through, is there supplements, do you need to see a chiropractor, do you need to do emotional work, because that's what it's about. It's really defined so that they get a whole package deal of what's going on in your body, why is it going on, and where did it start, and what are you going to do about it.
Mhm. So, just to understand better, it's looking at it more from a somatic experience in terms of where one is holding whatever the symptom may be in their body, and then being able to understand how the emotional side is perhaps contributing to that. Is that
A piece of it's somatic,
okay?
right? But when I go through the physical body, I'm actually looking at their organs
Okay.
and giving them a percentage. So you have this symptom. Let's go through lymph, brain, sinus, heart, blood, spleen. I go through all of them, find out which ones really light up or want to talk
Mm.
and what percentage. Oh, your adrenals are 500%. Let's take a look at what happened there. Maybe it's long term burnout. Maybe it's an argument or anger that they have or fear that they have that creates all the stress. And we just unwind it.
Mhm. And is there specific places where one can be holding things in their organs, and does that have a unique message in itself, or everyone's so unique in their own way that it shows up differently for everyone?
I have been taught and feel that, and the same as the 5 element chart in Chinese medicine,
Mhm.
liver is anger, gallbladder is anger, pancreas is lack of sweetness in life, and kidneys are fear, and heartbreak, heartbroken. Those places tend to still coagulate in that, but it will most likely be specific to the person because it's not all generalized.
And again, for yourself to be able to do something like this, I'm assuming there's a little bit of training there, but a lot of it is just something that you inherit, or how does it work, right? Like that intuitive side, how does that come about?
That I do have training. I became a massage therapist at 21, and not through it was a funny story. Not through thinking that I've always had a curiosity. My mom was always ill and she was supposed to die many times while I was growing up. And she went through a severe healing at, it was told she had 6 months to live. She went through a 3-year healing. She came out of that as a healer. And she was making $15 an hour as a massage therapist, and I was making 4. So I thought this was a good career change. And I fell in love with the human body. And that started me with just anytime a client came in that I didn't know how to address it, I went through the Harville Hendricks so that I could understand about imago work and couples therapy. I did energy work. I opened up a massage school and taught anatomy and physiology. I taught a lot of kinesiology and all one brain classes. Anything that felt like it was the next step for me, that's what I did. And eventually I channeled.
And what does that mean when one channels? Like, what is that experience like?
It was a long process for me to understand that I was getting messages while I was working with somebody. Like, to be like, tell them this. And I'd be in my head, I'm going, I'm not telling them that's, forget it. I'm not telling them that. And it would be like, for 10 minutes, you need to tell. And when I would take a deep breath in and say, okay, so this is what I'm getting, or this, and it would blow that it open to something that was really revelational for them. I felt that, okay, I guess I need to trust that. And it was more trust and trust. The channeling actually happened when I was listening to a recording that my mother, I was being trained to do inner child workshop. And the first workshop was my mom and I had a business together. And the teacher said, no, I just want your mother here, not you. Okay. She wanted to deal with something that happened to her 10 years ago. And they did a hypnosis session with her and they recorded it. And when I listened to it, it was her in her apartment at the time. And she was paralyzed in a way because there was 2 beings on either side of her. And she thought that she was going to be killed. And I heard her panic and a voice came up inside me. I have no idea, that said, we did not do that. And I had no idea what that was. So I sought the teacher out a couple of days later and said, look, this is happening. So he put me under, and that being, that energy came up. And I channeled for about 5 years, but I didn't particularly care for it. I didn't like the energy coming through me. I got energized afterwards. It was never negative, but it was the whole thing of, I'm not a visible person. I don't like being visible. And this felt too visible
Yeah.
for me. And so I asked that level of, can I do something different than bringing the energy? Because there was more than just one being coming in. There was this one and there's this one. There was 12 actually as a council. And they were like, yeah, be a mediator. So I go to a place, and it's now called the white space, and it's a place of co-creativity and neutrality. And they show me and I engage and I talk to people. I have groups that I run. And so I tell them what's going on. And so that place now, as I work with it as a mediator, also does healings in groups and individuals that are in the groups. So that's how it's been working for many years now.
Mhm, mhm. And it can be pretty heavy at times, especially, what you're explaining and describing here, to receive these messages and be a channel and a guide for other people. How do you make sure you're taking care of yourself? And for even in the healing space, for me, people will ask me, you could be taking on a lot of emotions, and especially if you're a person that has empathy for others, you can be carrying around all of that. But I'm curious, even that may be more so for you as well. How are you able to engage in self-care and make sure when to take a break, or when it feels like too much to be able to even express that?
Daily, what you have to realize is that water moves through us. So staying really hydrated during the day, if you're an energy worker or anything else, because that just keeps everything moving and out of the body, right? So that's one thing. Minerals are another. If you're really low in minerals, it'll help to keep everything alive and working the way that it does. I also have done it in the past, especially if I had an 8, 9, 10 hour day, that at the end of the day, it's about, I do a goodbye process, which is very easy. There's a long goodbye process when you're getting out of a relationship, but there's a very short goodbye process, which is I say goodbye to John, who today who brought in I say goodbye to Mary, who lost her mother. I say goodbye to, like, you just go through.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be in sequence. You just go through. And what I find out again, energy leaves because they're not just walking out the door. You're consciously, and you say goodbye to them. You're consciously saying, I'm done, cut off. It's the end of the day, whatever. And doing that before you go to bed, doing that when you're done work or any time that you feel like you've taken on too much, but before you go to bed, because then your brain can rest. It doesn't have to go through the whole day of what happened, what you're holding on to, what you need to let go of, or in your dream state.
Yeah, and that's really helpful to not hang on to it and let it pass. So the other piece around being someone in your role, historically, what I've understood is often because of skepticism sometimes that can come with this, or even just the nature of it, often people will have a low key profile in a way, right? Like they may not be in the public sphere as much. Why is it important for you to be here on this platform or in general in other forums as well, being on podcasts, to talk about these things? What is your hope by sharing some of the work you're doing? Yeah.
I've stayed invisible, lived in a couple different worlds simultaneously for most of my life. And when I came in contact with the channeling and I started to see the importance of people's history coming through them, I'm basically a creator. I'm an artist. I love creating. I'm in the garden all the time. I just want to create. When I was 10 years old, I said to myself as I looked out after I made a makeshift ice rink out of tinfoil. And I looked out and I said, I want to keep creating. I want to create and experience everything in this lifetime. I never really looked at that statement as being weird. But as I got older, I was like, everything in this lifetime, like I wasn't raised that there were other lifetimes, but that's how I saw it.
Mm,
And I love creating. And I feel that everybody is a creator.
mm,
And just need permission sometimes. They need support that you can move energy, you can create. Everybody channels. We just don't know that we channels. Everybody meditates. When you look at TV, you're not here.
mm,
You're somewhere else. So we have all these abilities. We have the ability to be psychic and intuitive and sometimes even telepathic. Like we have it all within us. As a creator, I want to show people that they can do that
mm,
and they're not alone and they're not weird.
mm, mm. Yeah, and what I'm hearing from you is, and often that permission needs to come from us because we tend not to believe in ourselves. And I think that's part of the limitation that comes from not being able to create. And I think what you're trying to do, and at least the way I understand it, is by sharing your own story, you're showing others that we can all do it, but we also need to give ourselves that permission and not hide per se.
Be curious. If we're curious and we want to be accountable and we want to hold on to our integrity and sovereignty, they're key things. And wanting to get better, because sometimes we use our stories as crutches
Yes.
and we're so used to them, even if they don't work anymore, even if they keep us confined and in a box, it's familiar.
Yeah.
So I would say to people, challenge your beliefs and your, where did you get that thought of you being not enough or that you're too much or you're too this or you're too that or whatever you've been judged about? Where did that come from? And is it really true?
Yeah. And I think the theme here is this inner exploration. And even when you're talking about being curious, it is to look inward and have that journey to go inward and understand what are the things that are holding me back. But through that exploration, as you can have this deeper sense of understanding, you can also then tap into this inner wisdom that we all have that sometimes gets silenced. And unfortunately, most of us will look to the outside world for that wisdom or our inner critic will take over if, as you said earlier, we don't feel good enough when there's so much shame. But beyond the curiosity, what are things people can do for that inner exploration? Because that can be very difficult if we live, especially in the world we live in, where there's so many distractions taking up our attention that I often see this for many people. And sometimes I even notice it in myself where an entire day can go by and I just feel like I was on autopilot. I didn't take many moments throughout the day to connect with myself, to see what's going on, what's my internal state, what is my inner wisdom telling me. I'm just running through the day like a machine, and then the day goes by, and sometimes it's just rinse and repeat. But it takes extra effort, I think, in the world today to be able to have those moments where you can reflect and pay attention to what's going on in the inside.
It doesn't take much. It doesn't take, people will say, oh, you need to meditate for a whole 45 minutes to an hour. Not really.
Mm-hmm.
If you spend 3 minutes a day with just breathing and just feeling yourself, even if you don't think about anything, you're not getting out of your head, you're just being in that, it does wonders for the body and it helps you to ground. Or be out in nature. Go for a walk, but don't put things in your ears and don't try not to think about the what you're going to do the next day or what I'm going to have for dinner when I come back or any of that. It's more about let me just be. And that being spreads. That being is something that our body needs, our spiritual body needs, our emotional body needs, all of us need. So if you say, I'm going to spend 3 minutes a day, whether that's first thing in the morning, lunchtime, or whatever, and just just do it. Within 10 days to 2 weeks of doing that, you'll develop a pattern and your body will definitely appreciate it and something will change. The other thing is if you have somebody, okay, that they've been meditating for a long time and they feel really accomplished in that and they feel good about that, but they want more, is to find a tool that will connect to your innate wisdom. And that can be anything. Kinesiology, learn a little bit about self-testing of kinesiology. Some people do ruins, they do any kind of the cards, they do tarot cards, they do something that feels like they resonate with, and you ask questions and you see what comes up. And then you start to trust because that's not something from the outside. That's your innate wisdom coming out in front of you in some way that's giving you either yes and no's or something in the cards or something that you can start to lean on while you're learning to trust yourself in your intuition, in your knowledge that you have, and not listening to everybody else on the outside. And oh, yeah, that sounds true. And oh, yeah, discernment is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Discerning is opening your heart and your mind and using the discernment. Yes, this makes sense. It's logical, but my heart doesn't really quite feel aligned with it. Or I feel really passionate about this, but my brain's saying, you better check something out. That discernment is really important because you're not giving up your sovereignty if you're using discernment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I thank you for building on that. I appreciate that. So there's one other thing that you touched on earlier, and I want to understand further when it comes to this whole notion of our body splitting off or the body rebelling. What does that mean? And I know you touched on it in terms of sometimes it's the symptoms we experience on a physical level, but why is this? What I would interpret from that is there's a level of disassociation happening where we tend
Mhm.
to disconnect. And but I wonder what that means and what does that look like for people? And is it just a matter of not being able to face some of that healing that needs to happen and everything we've been talking about around us feeling disconnected even throughout the day and being on autopilot? Is that essentially the main root cause there? And is that what's happening?
That's a piece of, and you have to keep in mind that the body's will and desire to live healthy, right? That's what we're designed to have is a long life of health. We don't get a manual for that. So we have to be very discerning to say, What can I tolerate? What can I tolerate? Am I drinking too much? Am I having too much coffee? Where's my sugar intake? Like all the things that we know are harmful in some way at some extent, right? It's not about abstinence unless you're really ill, and then you might have to do that and do a detox. But it's that place of understanding what makes your temple, your body, what does it need? And even in meditation, asking that. Like I'm big on asking questions when you go into meditation. That it's not just about the quiet space. Ask questions. Show me today what I don't know, and then look for it. What's happening? Did somebody mention a book? Did you just meet somebody new on the street? Where where is the response coming back when you start to ask questions?
Yeah.
What does my body need today? Hold something. Hold a glass of wine or whatever and ask, does my body need this now? It may say no.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it goes back to everything you're sharing is then if it says no, you have to be willing to
You
listen.
have to listen to it or you're creating division,
Yeah.
right? It's, yeah, I'm not going to like this if you drink this or you eat this. And you go, too bad, right? What do you think's going to happen? You're not going to feel well. And it becomes accumulative. And somewhere along the line, illness and disease comes up.
And even if you say you don't listen and you experience division, how do you then reconcile that? So there again, that could be where that shame comes in again and it further separates you. But say if I didn't listen to that inner voice and I'm like now like regretting it, how do I reconcile that for myself? Is it everything we've talked about around that acceptance piece and then sitting with it and maybe meditating, but paying attention to what am I hearing now?
If something happens that you feel split off from, or that you feel like you've done something to yourself in some way, there's an age attached to it. You go back and you do the Ho'oponopono to that age, or you listen to what, it can be a conversation, like you're in both spots, right? A conversation. But if you're accountable for what was created back there because some part of you was wounded, or you did this or that, and you have the conversation, or you have the declaration of I'm sorry that this happened to you, please forgive me. You're separating from, it's like a cooking pot, right? It's like it gets hot and it gets in that catalyst that it can't move. And so when you start to pull it apart by discernment or acknowledgement or forgiveness or whatever starts to happen in that, it's not so solidified anymore. And it stops showing up as much.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see truth to that. Definitely makes sense and something I would want to practice moving forward as well. But Darlene, thank you so much for this conversation. Very insightful. I appreciate everything you've shared, not only about the work you do, but how people can even apply that in their lives. There's so many layers to it. And I think just starting off being, as you touched on very early on, being receptive to it is perhaps that first step and being open to it. And sometimes that can be the hardest stage around how do I even become receptive? But right, I think
It's the first part is, but how most humans know is they need to be so damaged, or they feel so damaged that there isn't any other way that I need to go other than to surrender. And then that brings on growth.
mhm. Yes, yes, absolutely. Now, for listeners that want to learn more about your work or even find you online, what are some ways they can do that?
Soulunion.com is my website, and it has the groups that I run there. It also has a podcast that's there. I think everything is on soulunion.com, and they have a way to contact me there. They'll email me and it comes through the website.
Okay, great. Yeah, we will put all of that in the show notes. But thank you again for your time. I really appreciated the conversation and learned a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it immensely.